"Come on, buddy, clear your table. New customers are coming," said coffee shop owner Mike Henderson as he walked toward the elderly man's table. Robert Mitchell looked up with his pale blue eyes but said nothing. He just slowly stood up, counting the loose change in his pocket to pay his bill. But as he fumbled through his pocket, a small metal piece fell to the floor. At that moment, the young soldier who had just entered, Corporal James Rivera, gasped, because that small metal piece on the floor was something only a very special group could carry. Robert Mitchell was 72 years old and the quietest man in Cedar Falls. Every morning at exactly 7:30 a.m., he would walk through the doors of Miller's Coffee House. He would choose the same table, the corner table by the window. He would order the same thing, black coffee and plain toast, and he would sit quietly the same way, looking outside. The townspeople knew him, but nobody really knew who he was. Some called him Weird Old Bob. Children were afraid of him because he rarely smiled. Young people ignored him because he didn't know how to use a phone and wasn't on social media. Mike Henderson, the owner of the coffee shop, didn't much like Robert. "This guy bothers the customers," he would tell his wife. "He sits for hours, only drinks one coffee. This is a business, not a nursing home." But Robert didn't care. Sitting at that small table was a routine for him. Actually, it was the only routine he had left in life, because Robert Mitchell's past was far more complex than the townspeople could ever imagine. In 1971, he had served in Vietnam with the 1st Cavalry Division. But this wasn't ordinary service. Robert was in special operations, in a unit whose name was classified. He had participated in Operation Phoenix. Behind enemy lines, he had survived alone for months. He was wounded 3 times, nearly died twice, but saved his comrades. He was nominated for the Medal of Honor, but because the operation was classified, the medal was never awarded. When he returned home, he couldn't tell anyone what he had done. Even his family didn't know. For years he worked in a factory, got married, divorced, and remained alone. And now, 50 years later, he lived only with that small metal patch, the Special Operations Badge of the 1st Cavalry Division. That Tuesday morning, everything changed when everything seemed normal. Robert was sitting at his usual table, sipping his coffee. Mike Henderson came over when the customers filled up. "Bob, sorry, but I need the table. The lunch rush has started." Robert nodded, showing he understood. As he stood up, he tried to get his wallet from his pocket, but his hands were shaking. Old age and war wounds. As he fumbled through his pocket, the metal patch fell to the floor. Just then the door opened, and Corporal James Rivera entered. 25 years old, a Marine just returned from Iraq. He was on leave visiting his family in Cedar Falls. When James saw the metal piece on the floor, he froze. That badge, that was something he only knew as legend. 1st Cavalry Division, Special Operations, a badge that only very few people carried in Vietnam. "Sir," said James, shock in his voice, Is this yours?" Robert looked at the metal piece, then at James. He noticed the young soldier's uniform, Marine dress blues, the ribbons on his chest. "Iraq Campaign Medal." "Yes, son," said Robert quietly. "A very long time ago." James immediately stood at attention and saluted. "Sir, Corporal James Rivera, U.S. Marine Corps. It's an honor to meet you." Everyone in the coffee shop turned to look. What was happening? Why was the young soldier saluting old Bob? Mike Henderson frowned. "Hey, what's going on here?" "James, this is just old Bob. Why are you in Vietnam? Special operations." "What special operations?" Mike laughed. "This guy," James raised his hand, silencing Mike. Then he turned to Robert. "Sir, what operations did you participate in?" Robert hesitated. He hadn't told anyone for 50 years, but there was respect in this young soldier's eyes. Real respect. "Phoenix," he said quietly. "Operation Phoenix, long-range reconnaissance patrol." James's face changed. He knew that operation. He had studied it in military school. It was one of the legendary operations. But most of those who participated, "Sir, very few people survived that operation." "Yes, son, very few people." James swallowed. The man in front of him wasn't just weird old Bob. He was facing a living legend, a hero nobody recognized. "Sir, with your permission, may I hear this story?" Robert looked around. The whole coffee shop was watching them. Mike Henderson's face had turned red. Customers were whispering. "Not here, son," said Robert. "Too crowded." James immediately understood. "Sir, with your permission, I have my car. We can talk more comfortably." Robert nodded. But as he stood up, Mike Henderson stepped forward. "Wait a minute. Bob, you never told me you served in the military." "Why now?" "Because you never asked," said Robert calmly. "And my past didn't matter to you." Mike Henderson's face turned even redder, because it was true. For 5 years, Robert had come to his coffee shop every day, and Mike had never wondered who he was. James and Robert went outside. When they sat in James's car, Robert slowly began to tell his story. "I volunteered in 1969. I was 18 years old. I didn't know what to expect. But when I arrived in Vietnam, everything was different." James listened without saying a word. "They selected me for long-range reconnaissance patrol, LRRP, behind enemy lines, missions alone for weeks. Observation, sabotage, rescue." Robert's voice began to tremble. "In Operation Phoenix, we went to rescue a missing pilot, 8 people from Charlie Company. The helicopter crashed. The pilot was wounded. But the enemy had surrounded everything." "What happened, sir?" "We stayed behind enemy lines for 72 hours. I lost my comrades one by one. Finally, only the pilot and I remained. He was badly wounded too." Robert stopped, took a deep breath. "I carried him 20 kilometers, on my back. The enemy was chasing us, but I couldn't leave him. Marine motto, leave no one behind." James's eyes filled with tears. "Did you save him?" "Yes. But the price was heavy. I still have shrapnel pieces in my left leg. I received Purple Heart, Bronze Star, Silver Star. But most importantly, that pilot lived." "Who, sir? Who was the pilot?" Robert smiled, but it was a bitter smile. "General Marcus Thompson, the current Thompson at the Pentagon. He was a young pilot then. Now he's a 4-star general." James was shocked. He knew General Thompson. He was a famous general. "Sir, is General Thompson in contact with you?" "No, son. He rose to the top. I stayed here. But I don't mind. I did my duty." That night, James couldn't sleep. Robert's story wouldn't leave his mind. The next morning, he made a decision. More people should know Robert's story. But first, he did research. Military records, internet, old university professors, and he found it. Operation Phoenix was real. Robert Mitchell's name appeared in top-secret files. Silver Star, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, all of it was real. But most surprising was what General Thompson said in a 2019 interview. "I owe my life to one person, a soldier who saved me in Vietnam. I can't even say his name because the operation is classified. But that man is a real hero." James trembled. He was talking about Robert Mitchell. The next morning he went to find Robert. But he wasn't at home. He wasn't at the coffee shop either. Finally, he found him at the hospital. He had had a heart attack. "Sir, how are you?" "I'm fine, son. Just a little tired." "Sir, I need to tell you something. I researched General Thompson." Robert's face changed. "Son." "Sir, he still talks about you. In a 2019 interview, he's looking for you." Robert was silent for a long time. "Son, he's a general. I'm just an old man." "No, sir. You're a hero, and everyone should know that." James took out his cell phone. "Sir, with your permission, I'm going to try to reach General Thompson." Robert nodded. He didn't object anymore. James called the Pentagon. At first they didn't believe him, but James insisted. He told Robert's story. Finally, he was connected to General Thompson's office. "General Thompson, this is Corporal James Rivera. I want to give you information about Robert Mitchell." The silence on the phone lasted for minutes. "Did you say Robert Mitchell?" The general's voice was trembling. "Yes, sir. He's the soldier who saved you in Vietnam. He's currently in Cedar Falls, in the hospital." "Damn," General Thompson exhaled. "I've been looking for him for 50 years. Give me the address. I'm coming right away." 2 days later, 3 black SUVs came to Cedar Falls. General Thompson got out in full uniform. With him were 2 aides, security detail. When he entered the hospital, everyone was amazed. What was a 4-star general doing in a small-town hospital? When he entered Robert's room, both of them cried. They were meeting again after 50 years. Bob, I finally found you. Marcus, you became a general. Thanks to you, Bob. Everything thanks to you. General Thompson had brought a box. Inside was the Congressional Medal of Honor. This is yours, Bob. It's 50 years late, but this is yours. But Robert refused. General, I didn't do it for a medal. I did it for duty. I know, Bob. That's why you're the man who deserves it. That day, Cedar Falls changed. Robert Mitchell was no longer weird old Bob. He was a hero, a real American hero. Mike Henderson came to the coffee shop to apologize. Bob, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Mike, it's okay. How could you have known? From now on, your coffee is free, always. Robert laughed. Thanks, Mike, but I prefer to pay. I'm not a charity case. James returned to his base when his leave ended, but he stayed in touch with Robert. He would call every week. A year later, Robert died. Heart failure. But his funeral was the biggest funeral Cedar Falls had ever seen. General Thompson came. 50 soldiers came. American Legion, VFW, Marine Corps League. Everyone came. James gave a speech at the funeral. Robert Mitchell never claimed to be a hero. He never wanted attention. He lived quietly among us for 50 years. But he was a real hero. And now we all know. The inscription they had written on Robert's tombstone was simple. Robert Mitchell, U.S. Army Vietnam veteran, silent hero, never forgotten. Today in Cedar Falls, there's a plaque at the door of Miller's Coffee House. It says Robert Mitchell Memorial Table. That corner table is now his, and every day a veteran can drink free coffee at that table. James is now a sergeant, second tour in Iraq. But in every letter he talks about Robert. He tells his story. Because some heroes are silent, some heroes are invisible, but they are the real heroes, like Robert Mitchell, like the invisible heroes living among you. Maybe there's someone like that next to you too. Maybe you should be curious. Maybe you should ask, who are you really? Because sometimes the most ordinary-looking people have the most extraordinary stories, and sometimes a single badge can change an entire town. Robert Mitchell's story isn't over. He lives in every story James tells. He lives in every free coffee at that coffee house. He lives at the table that bears his name. Because real heroes never die. They live in memories. They live in stories. They live in respect. And sometimes all they need is for someone to notice them. For someone to ask, is this badge yours? And from that moment on, everything changes.